Hi everyone, I'm Jane at Rockin' Worms. I hope you're having a great evening. What I'm going to be talking about with this video is how I'm turning bedding into finished castings in 3 weeks. What? 3 weeks? I thought it took months. Yes, it does if you don't start using bedding that is really ready to rock and roll with your worms. And for me, that means my tabletop indoor pre-composted bedding, of which I have a whole little series of videos you can watch so you can learn how to do it yourself in your space that you have indoors, or you can do it outdoors if you want, if you take some precautions. But it's done with basically free materials. Okay, but that's in that video and you can watch it to find out more about that. But I want to show you what it looks like going through your worm bin in 3 weeks from start to castings. Okay, so let's get into the bin. One of the reasons I'm talking about this is because I uploaded a video just a couple days ago about 4 breeder bins. And one of the things that that comparison of what was going on in those four breeder bins showed is how quickly the breeders are turning the bedding into castings. And a couple of my commenters were like, oh my God, how can that be happening so quickly? And I want to show you another example in a grow out bin, which is a bin where I have worms of all ages that got all new, fresh, pre-compost and sifted cow manure bedding on May 26th, which is 23 days ago. So 3 weeks and 2 days ago. And you can see right away that this is castings and it's ready to be sifted. And it's one of the things I'm going to do as I'm feeding this bin tonight with you. I'm going to also start prepping it, which is drying it down, because this is very moist, not wet, but very moist. The worms are very happy in here. Nice looking worms. But I'm going to start drying down the bedding, the castings, moving the worms, encouraging the worms to move to the working end of the bin, so I can sift this out in the foreseeable future, however long it takes it to dry down a little bit more so I can sift it more easily. It might be 5 days, it might be 7 days, it might be a little bit longer. We're having a lot of rain here in Southeast Florida. And, oh, here's a cocoon, here's a cocoon. Oh, I take that back, it was a tail. Ha! It was a tail of one of the worms. Okay. Yeah, this bedding holds moisture really, really well. So it also might take a little bit longer for the bedding to dry down. So it might take 5 days, it might take 7 days, it might take 9 days. It takes what it takes. Okay, but why am I in this bin other than to check on the status of the worms, do a little fluffing, see that I have changed, I changed, like I did it, right? It's the worms. Here is what the indoor pre-compost bedding looks like before any worm has touched it. All right, and again, there's sifted cow manure in here. Okay, so you can see, let me get a handful, what the comparison is. You can see how much finer the castings is from the raw compost. But this raw compost is looking pretty good in and of itself. It's actually broken down a lot, even though, again, no worm has touched this. So why does it look so processed to begin with? That's because this pre-compost has been, cooking right along for several months now. This is actually getting to the end of my my outdoor bin. I'm already started a new batch of pre-compost because I'm at the end. So what happens in the pre-compost is that even though I'm done doing heating and cooling cycles and really ramping up that biota to break down the cardboard, to break down the paper, to break down the coffee grounds that I put into it. Once I'm done with it and I just let it, sit and be happy, the biota in here don't stop working on eating that material, that carbon and that nitrogen. So when I start using it in the beginning, it's chunkier because the biota hasn't worked on it as long. But now that this compost is several months old, the biota has turned this into ready to eat fast food for the worms. And if you watch some other videos, fast food usually refers to things like lettuce and watermelon and other melons that worms, again, can eat very quickly on their own. Plus, the biota gets into it very quickly and makes it easier for the worms to consume. But the biota has done that in this pre-compost. So this pre-compost is more like finished compost and is more like fast food than it is strictly bedding. Okay, if you follow that. So the quicker the quicker you can get any materials you put into your worm bin to be in a state that your worms can quickly consume it, the faster they're going to do that and turn it into castings. So I am just aerating. Now I can feel where I had the last feeding. It looks like on the last feeding, I ran out of napkins by the time I got to this bin. And I was using a piece of newspaper, sales circular from a local grocery store as my indicator of where the food went. And again, the last feeding in this bin was on the 11th, which is just 7 days ago, a week ago. And it was all that fast food of lettuce. And I have a video of that. I'll link it in the description so you can watch that if you want. So this is where the feeding was. And you can see that the worms don't go through the newspaper as quickly as it does a napkin or the rest of the food. That's completely expected. Okay, so I'm just gonna move this over here. And you can see how nicely actually that the newspaper acts as an absorption, because you can see how soaked it is. So it's doing its job, absorbing the liquid that comes off the vegetable matter as it defrosts and decomposes. Okay, so again, you can see how lovely this is. Look at all these worms, mixed ages, a lot of little babies, a lot of juveniles, and here's a breeder age adult right here. Okay. So what am I going to do? I'm actually going to give them some more vegetable fruit food. And I'm going to set this up a little bit more to dry down and also start moving the worms out of the end I want to sift in the foreseeable future down towards the working end of the bin, so they'll be out of my way when I go to sift. I am going to do that by, I have a napkin. Here we go. Napkin from dinner the other day. Oop, I got a worm. hitching a ride on my glove. If you work with worms, either with gloves or your bare hands, always check. Look at this, is another one. He was just clinging onto the back of my little finger. Didn't even know he was there. Always check your hands and your gloves when you are, finishing up, because worms will hitch a ride. It's also very important to check your hands for worms and cocoons if you have different species bins and you're trying to keep those species apart, because you get a worm or a cocoon into the wrong bin and you're pretty much done. It'll take a lot of effort to then separate those species out later on. Okay, so there's my underlayment. I'm gonna put in a little pre-compost on the bottom to absorb even more liquid, because again, this is damp, but I want to start drying this down. And I recently introduced in the last video, you guys, to my dry dehydrated vegetable and fruit mix that I make at home using my blender and my dehydrator to make dried vegetable powder. This is 100% dry vegetables and fruits, okay? There's nothing else in here. There's no flour, there's no crackers. It is 100% fruits and vegetables, okay? So, and because it's dehydrated, this is actually a lot of fruits and vegetables. 1/4 cup of this stuff will rehydrate to almost a cup of vegetables. So this is a lot of food in here for them. Now, one of the reasons I want to put the dry stuff in here is, again, it'll start absorbing the moisture in this bedding and help dry it down. I am still going to give just a little bit of mixed foods in here, because this dry vegetable stuff will, I think, act more as fast food than slow food, because it's so small, a worm can just suck those little particles in. So I think they're going to eat that pretty quick. So because I need some time to cycle back to these bins, I need to put in some slower food so they'll take longer to eat it, and that gives me more time to come back. I am going to put in just the tiniest shake of worm chow to, again, entice the worms down into this feeding trough so I can start to consolidate the worms in this bin so I can do sifting better. This is azomite, which is a soil additive. It also will act as grit. And the last thing I'm going to put in is a little agricultural lime that will also act a little bit as grit, but also do some pH buffering due to the vegetables that I'm adding to the bin. Okay, what do I want to do next? I think I just want to cover this up. I'm not doing a lot in this bin other than doing a feed in order to entice the worms down. This is, again, the pre-compost and the manure mix, just a little bit. And then I'm going to put this newspaper back on top that was in there. And now I'm going to cover this up. Oh, you know what this is? This is a mango pit that's still in this bin. It's been in here for months and months and months. Let me see if I can break it open. Looks like I can. Okay, let's see what we got in here. Okay. So, oh, here's little worms on it. They really like it. Let's see if we got anybody inside yet. No, not yet. But I can see that there's decomposing critters. Oh, here it looks like some springtails and stuff. So they're working on breaking this pit down. So let me just put this down here in the food trough. Okay, so I'm going to cover the feeding zone up. Now, what I'm going to also do, because I want to start drying this down, is I'm going to make this end that I want to sift first less deep so it can, evaporate the moisture out a little bit quicker and faster than the deeper working end of the bin. The dry down of the bin on this end will also encourage the worms to vacate to the working end of the bin. So I am getting the worms to leave a little bit quicker, and I'm also drying down the contents of the bin a little bit quicker by making it more shallow so I can sift a little bit sooner. Okay, that looks good. All right, so I am going to cover up. Oh, you know what? I have these pieces of newspaper that were mostly eaten on the top of the bin when I opened it up. Let me just put them here. There's no reason to waste that. The worms will continue to eat this newspaper. Okay. And what I'm going to do is take another newspaper, saddle, circular, whatever you want to call it, and I'm just going to cover the working end of the bin to keep the moisture in versus the uncovered end of the bin, so the worms will move in the direction I want them to. You know what, that's fine. It doesn't have to be exactly, the worms will move over just fine the way this is. All right, I'm gonna cover it up again, half with the plastic cover. It actually usually goes in pretty good this way. If I fold it in half, the size works out pretty good. So again, I'm just covering this end with the plastic, keep the moisture in, keep this end as attractive as possible, make this end less attractive so the worms will move down. All right, last thing I'm going to do is, label my bin. Here's my labels where I make notes. This is where I said that I started, it's a grow out bin. I started the bedding on the 26th. That's what I told you in the beginning. So that's been, like I said, 23 days when they got all fresh bedding. And the last time I fed was on the 11th, which is 7 days ago. So I'll put a notation that I fed it today so I can keep track of that. All right, this bin is done and ready to start entering its next phase of life. All right, that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. I hope you found that informative, learned a couple tips and tricks on how to work your bins. But the most important thing I want you to really start thinking about is your bedding, and what kind of bedding are you using, and how you can improve your bedding so your worms will eat it faster and turn it into castings faster. Okay, so that's what I really want you to start thinking about, whether it's doing something like the pre-compost will help you, or maybe there's other ways that you can move your bedding along so when you put it in your worm bin, it's further in the process and your worms can really go to town on it. Okay, questions, concerns, what you're doing, all of that is great. Put it please in the comments because I want to have those conversations with you. All right, otherwise, have a good rest of your night. Take care. I am always yours in the dirt, Jayne.